Good evening, everyone. For Tell Us All English, I'm Sarah Bagan in Caracas, Venezuela. We start in El Salvador, where much of the country is celebrating after Pope Francis officially declared Archbishop Oscar Romero to be a martyr. It means Romero is almost certain to be beatified in the coming months, and he could later be made a saint. Oscar Romero was shot dead by a right-wing death squad as he celebrated Mass in 1980. At the start of the El Salvador Civil War, he regularly devoted his sermons to defending the poor and criticizing the country's oligarchy. Pope Francis said he was gunned down out for hatred for his Catholic faith. President Salvadorans, who was a guerrilla leader at the time of Romero's death, called the event historic. Moving on to Colombia. As part of the peace talks in Cuba, the FARC delegation is pushing for recognition of the victims of the 50-year conflict in line with international standards.
Considering that the victims are mostly the humble and excluded of our country, such recognition would be crucial. With a differential focus, it will have a gender perspective, emphasizing on women's rights and well-mind international standards.
Poseerá una perspectiva de género.
Pastor Alape also said the anti-personal minds theme was currently on the table.
We hope that in this table we treat these subjects so that we do not start debating them in that sense. These are subjects of the table. I believe there will be a good path in that direction.
For his part, the chief negotiator for the Colombian government, Humberto de Calle, said that the removal of the mines was not just a vague promise, but a firm commitment.
For several weeks, we have treated the subject of escalation of the conflict, and in particular, proposal on demining. It is not speculation. It is a subject which we have been working on for months, and public opinion wanted clarity about the government's wish, and that need of these gestures get acted on. And in particular, in this case, the subject of demining, that we know is crucial for many Colombian communities.
The UN has ended its final day of discussions on the Ayotzinapa case. The UN Human Rights Committee criticized the Mexican government's handling of the case. The special committee also questioned the number of Mexican security forces that have been prosecuted for the crime of enforced disappearances, as well as the planned date for withdrawing the army from the streets of the country. The parents of the Mexican students voiced their distrust of Mexican authorities and said they hoped that pressure from the United Nations could force their government into launch an investigation into their children's disappearance last September.
The Mexican government has been detailing everything it is doing for quite some time now, according to them, but in reality, the Mexican government is not doing anything. They're all claiming so, but they are not acting, not doing anything. We would hope that they would act well, out of a sense of responsibility, but to have them act well would require changing the entire government, because it's always the same. Everyone would have to be removed.
Former Cuban leader Fidel Castro is, quote, full of life, unquote, at the age of 88, says a Cuban student whose recent meeting with the revolutionary leader was captured in photographs. The photographs showed Castro in good health. Perdomo, the president of the Federation of Cuban Students, said the Cuban leader is still idealistic and spirited.
I would especially like to transmit that Fidel is full of life with great joy and enthusiasm, and I think he is still accompanied by his youthful dreams, and I think our challenge as youth is the commitment, and especially to what I try and learn and study. As he has asked to transmit to all students, is to have humility in the practice of study and contribution as professionals and as revolutionaries.
Large parts of the Peruvian Amazon are underwater after torrential rains caused several rivers to burst their banks. Parts of the San Martin region in the Amazon, located about 1,500 kilometers north of Lima, are among the hardest hit areas. Local media reported tons of mud and rocks. Falling trees killed at least one truck driver, and dozens more are still missing. Now, a look at some of the other top stories in the world today. The price of oil has seen another sharp rise of around 6% this Tuesday. Brent crude went up to $58 a barrel. while US oil climbed to 53. That means world oil prices have increased by about 19% in the last 3 days, after their massive fall from last year's peak of $107 a barrel. The rally comes as lower prices force many companies to slow down shale oil production in the United States. The Islamic State group has released a video purporting to show a captured Jordanian pilot being burnt alive. The video has yet to be confirmed, but shows a man resembling the pilot, Muad al-Kasaisper, walking through rubble caused by Western airstrikes. He is later seen standing in a black cage before being set alight. The pilot was captured by Islamic State in December. Jordanian state TV is reporting he was killed a month ago. Both the Jordanian government and the US backers have condemned the killing and promised a strong response.
يعلم كل الأردنيون أن من كان يشكك بوحشية تنظيم داعش الإرهابي.
All Jordanians know that whoever was doubting the barbarianism of this terrorist Daesh group, here is the proof. And whoever thought that they represent a forgiving Islam, this is also the proof. And whoever doubted the unity of the Jordanians in the face of evil, we will show them the proof. Jordan's response will be firm, tough and strong. We will show them, and they will learn that the anger of Jordanians will shake their ranks.
Should, in fact, this video be authentic, it's just one more indication of the viciousness and barbarity of this organization. And I think we'll redouble the vigilance and determination on the part of a global coalition to make sure that they are degraded and ultimately defeated.
Continuing our coverage of Ukraine, protesters arrived at the presidential palace demanding President Petro Poroshenko declare martial law. The demonstrators had demanded access to the administration's conference room in order to make a TV statement. The rioters' demands include the introduction of martial law in Ukraine over the fighting with the rebels in the southeast of the country. They also insisted on the resignation of the heads of all Ukrainian security agencies due to their incompetence. The UN's highest court rejected rival claims of genocide by Croatia and Serbia in landmark rulings over the 1991-1995 war. 16 years after the first case was lodged at the International Court of Justice, Chief Judge Peter Tomka dismissed Zagreb's claim that Serb forces committed genocide during Croatia's War of Independence. He made a similar ruling in a counterclaim by Belgrade over a Croatian counter-offensive. Tomka said both sides had committed crimes during the conflict, including forcible displacement, but that neither had proved genocide.
Finally, the Court considers that the series of 17 factors invoked by Croatia do not lead to the conclusion that there was an intent to destroy, in whole or in part, the Croats in the regions concerned.
Serbian President Tomislav Nikolic said that International Court of Justice verdict had not fully responded to Serbia's expectations, but did establish that Croatian forces had committed mass crimes against the Serb population in Croatia.
Iako protivtužba Srbije nije usvojena,
The judgment of the International Court of Justice is of great importance for Serbia and the people of Serbia, because it tends to correct the stereotypes that the international community has about the events that took place in former Yugoslavia in between 1991 and 1995.
However, the Croatian President Zoran Milanovic was not happy with the decision.
The court ruled against the crime of genocide, but we all know what happened, which is that war crimes and ethnic cleansing have been committed.
The first large-scale trials of 2 Ebola vaccines had begun in Liberia. The vaccines, which contain harmless elements of the killer virus that trigger an immune response, were administered to 12 volunteers at the start of a trial which will eventually involve up to 27,000 adults. More than 8,500 people have died in the Ebola outbreak, the vast majority in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone.
If the vaccine is successful, what will happen is that for someone that may have it in the future, they may come down with some little fever and so forth, but it won't be as it has been, where it's going to lead to the most severity to death and so forth. So this is because your body has been exposed to it, and therefore the consequences of you being exposed will decrease.
In Syria, the humanitarian crisis is worsening, making it even more urgent all parties come to the peace talks table. We go to Nashwan Abdullah for this report.
On Tuesday, the Syrian National Opposition Parties released a statement regarding the last meeting in Moscow, where peace for the Syrian crisis was discussed. They stressed the priority of fighting terrorism, the humanitarian situation, and the importance of forming a government integrated by all the Syrian national parties with no external intervention. Nahid al-Husseini, a member of the Arab American Congress, said that the political solution in Syria is the only path to end the conflict.
The national opposition, which is operating inside Syria, of course, they have said so many times no for intervention. They have said many times no for external powers. They have said many times for external diktats. We don't need that. We need a unified country, but at the same time, we need democracy. And nothing wrong with the democracy.
With the ongoing conflict in Syria, which erupted in March of 2011, the humanitarian crisis continues to worsen day by day. According to the United Nations, about 9 million Syrians have been displaced and close to 200,000 have been killed. Also, the country's infrastructure has been seriously damaged due to the ongoing shelling and bombing.
We have also been able to conduct cross-line operations where we have managed, through coordination with the authorities and with the other parties to the conflict, so that they facilitate for us and grant us access to people affected. The same applies to the health situation. We have also provided a lot of support to almost 27 hospitals in various governorates.
Meanwhile, the Syrian people are coexisting in spite of the current crisis, which have deprived them of security and basic human rights. Nashwan Abdullah, Telesur, Damascus, Syria.
Colombian painter Fernando Botero has attended the opening of an exhibition in his honor in the town of his birth, Medellin. Botero is famous in the art world for his voluminous figures. His new exhibition, The Circus, features 32 old paintings and 20 drawings made by the artist after finding a popular circus in Mexico, where he lived during the mid-1950s. Britain is the first place in the world to approve a fertilization procedure that combines the DNA of 3 different people to prevent mothers with mitochondrial disorders from passing often deadly diseases to their children. The fertility technique uses 2 different methods to substitute a mother's abnormal mitochondria with a donor's healthy mitochondria. One treatment method incorporates a mother's nucleus into a donor's egg, while the other method combines the DNA of the parents with a donor's healthy mitochondria.
Nobody's saying that scientists are of one voice and one mind on this, but it should be noted by the House that the overall weight of international scientific opinion is very much in favour of these techniques and has been looked at very exhaustively.
More on these and other stories on our website, telesortv.net/English. For Telesor English, I'm Sarah Bagan. Good night.